Everyone says that Sukuna was simply stronger than Gojo. Personally, I completely disagree with that. And after carefully reading the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, I was left with a very clear feeling that this wasn't really about raw strength at all. Because if you break everything down properly and actually follow the rules the manga itself established earlier, a very uncomfortable question starts to appear. Did Gojo actually lose in a fair fight, or was he quietly removed from the equation long before the battle ever became truly even? And yes, this is just my personal interpretation, and I'm going to explain how I see the events of the manga. I'm not claiming this is the only truth, but the deeper I looked into the details, the more it felt like there are simply too many convenient coincidences that work perfectly for the plot, but not so well for the logic of Gojo's fight. Let's rebuild the timeline. On November 19th, Gojo is released from the prison realm. Imagine that moment properly. He spent months in complete isolation, cut off from reality, from people, from any information. He comes out and instantly neutralizes Urama in one move, one of Sukuna's strongest subordinates, and then he stands face to face with the main antagonist. At that point, Sukuna only had 15 out of 20 fingers. He had not yet completed the ritual that fully suppressed Megumi's soul. His control over the vessel was unstable. Megumi was resisting, meaning Sukuna's cursed energy output in close-range situations could behave unpredictably. Gojo's 6 eyes aren't just a cool visual detail. Officially, it's an ability that grants perception on an atomic level, allowing him to see the amount and nature of cursed energy in every being around him. Gojo physically could not fail to understand that he was looking at an incomplete version of the final boss. The power gap was real and measurable, essentially about 25% of full strength if you go by fingers. And that is a massive difference. So what does he do? He agrees to wait until December 24th. Over those 35 days, Sukuna absorbs the remaining fingers and reaches full power. The ritual finishes suppressing Megumi's soul and removes all limitations on output. Kenjaku also completes everything necessary in the culling game and secures his plans for the duel. The gap that existed on November 19th didn't just close, it actually turned against Gojo. He knew his enemy was weakened and still gave him time to become stronger. Gojo is a character with immense pride and his own personal rules. Defeating a weakened Sukuna wouldn't have given him the satisfaction he had been chasing his entire life. That's consistent with his character. But we're talking about someone who fully understands what Sukuna is capable of. The pragmatism of a special grade sorcerer, someone who understands the value of every passing day, should have overridden his pride. It should have, but it didn't, because the author needed a different outcome. Now Kenjaku, and this is where my skepticism really peaks. Kenjaku is a 1,000-year-old manipulator, literally the architect of everything happening in their world. Gojo knows this, and the 6 eyes allow him to perceive the essence of things. And yet, when Kenjaku stands there clearly afraid, because in a direct fight, he poses zero threat to Gojo, Gojo simply lets him go. This doesn't feel like Gojo acting as a character. It feels like narrative necessity disguised as characterization. Kenjaku had to survive so that other characters could get their trials. From a structural storytelling perspective, it makes sense. But let's call it what it is. Gojo is deliberately weakened as a strategist, so the main villain can continue the game. Now let's move to the actual Shinjuku battle, and this is the most painful part of the analysis. Sukuna is fighting with Mahoraga and Ajito by his side. That's effectively 3 versus 1. Meanwhile, Yuta and Maki fighters, who could genuinely shift the balance, are kept on the sidelines. The rule that they must not intervene until Gojo weakens is presented as a tactical decision. But in reality, it feels like an artificial barrier imposed by the author. Think about it. Yuta, with Rika and his arsenal of copied techniques, could have pressured Ajito or slowed Mahoraga's adaptation to infinity. Maki, who is invisible to cursed techniques and can deal direct physical damage, would have been the perfect counter to the Shikigami no cursed energy interference at all. And most importantly, the team had Jacob's Ladder, a technique that nullifies cursed techniques and objects. If Mahoraga is part of the 10 Shadows technique, then using Jacob's Ladder at the moment adaptation begins should have either forced the Shikigami back into the shadow or completely reset the adaptation process. They had a tool that could have changed everything. Yuta had already copied that technique. He was sitting in the observation room and still didn't deploy it at the critical moment. Keeping him there is a direct narrative restriction on the team's tactical options, purely to ensure a specific outcome. Sukuna needed Mahoraga's adaptation as his final trump card, so the trump card had to remain in play, and that's exactly what happened. Now to what hit me the hardest, the slash that splits the world. Gojo stands still and takes the hit. The Six Eyes operate on an atomic level. They can detect the spark, the initial impulse of energy before any technique activates, fractions of a second before it happens. At that moment, Sukuna was in a critical condition. An attack of that scale should have produced an enormous surge of energy, and we've already seen that Gojo can teleport instantly over large distances. This was shown multiple times in the manga. So why in this one moment does he just stand there? This is the core of the entire breakdown, and I want to be very clear about this. I'm not saying Gege Akutami is a bad writer. Jujutsu Kaisen is an outstanding work in many respects. I'm talking about a specific narrative decision with specific consequences that was made intentionally. The story needed Gojo's death so that Yuji Itadori could become the central figure of the final arc. Gojo solved problems too efficiently. Keeping him alive would have left no room for Yuji's growth. That's understandable storytelling logic, but a nerfed Gojo doesn't become any less real because of that. This plan is real and multi-layered. Together, these aren't coincidences, they form a structured system for removing a character from the story. One thought still sticks with me, not the loss of Gojo itself, but the feeling that there exists a parallel version of this story. One where Gojo acted fully as Gojo calculated, ruthless when necessary, with allies positioned correctly and Jacob's ladder used at the right moment. That would have been a different manga. Maybe less emotionally dramatic for a wide audience, but far more consistent with the rules the author himself established. So, I'll leave you with this question. When is a character nerf narratively justified, and when does it become a violation of the rules the author themselves created? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious about your take.